beach. They're at beach level. We can't make it have access to the sea, but they can then at least have a family group around them and be on the beach.
Can I ask then that yourself and Councillor Harris submit a PIC so this piece of work can be put onto the office's programme and be managed? Obviously, it's probably not something we're going to manage this season, but it's something that we could probably look at some samples and trials for the winter months so that we can.
An ideal way to go through it. Just sorry, the other question was, I've seen a lot of groups of school children on the beach the last week or so when it's been terribly hot and sat by the town clock. And although some of them are wearing hats, because most schools, you two know that you get told to wear a hat or put sun cream on, there were several children sat there without hats on, and there were several children on the beach sat in their group. I just wonder whether it's worth the council investing in some gazebos that we can hire out to schools to allow them to put a gazebo up over where these, because these children sat there like at 11:30, really hot, sunny day. I was thinking, oh, should they actually be doing that? So whether that's something else we could do, I don't know.
We do have some gazebos. Some schools do approach us to mark an area out. So it could certainly be something that when they approach us, we can say, yes, we can mark you an area out. Also, we have some gazebos if you would like us to put them out at the same time. So,
thank you.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. That's the end of the councillor questions. Unless anyone else has got anything. And we'll move on to item 6, which is public questions. Have we received any submissions into the office?
No questions have been received yet.
No. Okay, I'll just take the opportunity then to remind members of the public who may be watching us. You can ask us any questions. Do send us an email into the office email address, which is available on the front of an agenda, and your sort of points and views can be heard and discussed by this committee. Moving on to item 7 then, which is the Tumbledown Governance Review. I'm going to ask our Town Clerk, Jane Biscombe, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall this item coming forward at the last full council meeting, where it was decided to refer it to the Services Committee for determination at this committee. So for clarity, the decision can be made tonight and it does not need to be referred back onto full council. Services has the delegation. So the report that you have as part of the agenda, members, is to propose new governance arrangements for Tumbledown following a review of the existing arrangements and in light of the significant positive project developments in the last year. I know a number of you have visited Tumbledown and are aware of the amazing work that's happening there in the community growing spaces, the forest school, the plantings that are happening, the food fields, the beehives that are there, the significant amount of work that's been carried out at Swallow Barn that now provides a wonderful base for our local clients who are using it, which includes local people with physical and learning disabilities who are getting on the land and learning about food production there. There's a magnificent amount of volunteering going on at the area, but I'm aware that Councillors Orrell and Councillors Lambert are here tonight who know far more about the project than I do and are far more closely involved. But suffice to say, Tumbledown has really been motoring. It is really showing exactly what it can bring to the local landscape, both in terms of the physical landscape and the landscape of services that we can provide to local people. Great bit of partnership working, great bit of volunteering. So the proposal remains unchanged for the one that came before you at full council. It's to split the current group into 2 groups, one that focuses on the project management side. This will monitor progress against agreed plans, report back to the Services Committee, report to the project board that is being set up, recommend amendments to project management documentation to come forward to this committee. And it's there that the councillors, you will have the oversight of the committee. Also makes it a lot more visible to not just the councillors, but to the public as well, as it will be coming regularly to the services committee. And this group will remain focused on the strategic plan, the strategic budget. I've suggested that it could comprise 5 councillors and 3 officers. However, I know there are some differing views, and so one of the decisions in front of you is to determine the makeup of that group. The second group is more of an operational group. Having this separate group will free the project group up to maintain the strategic overview and free an operational group up to do the literal on the ground sort of work and discussions. The operational group will involve both councillors and the Friends of group, but also community growth space tenants and other voluntary groups, other people that use the area. This will allow Alan Chambers, who is our site manager, to get a good level of information from all of those using the site to feed into and feed up into the strategic group if necessary. And the site manager will act as those links. And the operational group could divide its work into discrete areas, so have separate meetings on things like buildings, health and safety, food production, etc. So the aim of this is to free up the 2 areas to be able to operate slightly independently of each other, because they are very different discrete areas. But I am aware we have 2 representatives from Tumbledown here tonight, Councillor Orrell and Councillor Lambert, but I am happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Town Clerk. Do either Councillor Lambert or Orrell have anything to sort of add at the introductory stage before we go into full sort of debate on the item? Councillor Lambert?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I may just ask a couple of questions and then come back later when I've heard other people's views. So the first question is, with regard to the Tumbledown project group, it says report to the project board, brackets to be set up. Can I have some clarification on what that's about?
So this is the group that I brought a short information report to, sorry, through the chair, to the last full council, I think it was, about my setting up a non-decision making group to support me and other senior officers within the council with maintaining a strategic overview of all projects. This will help myself and senior managers allocate resources. As Councillor Hope has alluded to, we do have a finite amount of officer resource. So this will not only allow us to have a look at all the projects that are coming through all the PIDs, but also have an oversight and monitoring on the projects themselves that the councillors already agreed. It's not a decision-making group. It won't make any changes to project plans, etc. It's just to maintain that overview. As such, it will look at the Tumbledown project, but also Radipole Park and Gardens, things like the nursery, other parks and gardens projects, internal projects that we might have. It's just to assist myself, Ian and Charmaine, in making sure we keep an eye on everything that's happening, because there is an awful lot of stuff happening. The first meeting of that group should be towards the end of August, beginning of September.
Thanks for that clarification. I asked it because you've got the Tumbledown project group and then you've got project board, and I wanted to make sure that was clarified.
Council-wide strategic.
Yeah. The second point I would make is that the Tumbledown operational group, or question I should say, the Tumbledown operational group is suggested, I think, that it would meet monthly. There's no time suggestion with regard to the Tumbledown project group, and I think that is an issue that we do need to clarify tonight, Chair. Thank you. Those are the 2. Well, I suppose my question there is, why is there no time suggestion made for the Tumbledown project group? Frequency suggestion.
Clark, is that one you can answer?
It is, Chair. Purely an omission on my part, Councillor Lambert, and I'm happy to follow suggestions, but my recommendation will be that make quarterly.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Councillor Rowan.
Thank you, Chair. If I might, if I can give a bit of context, I agree with the proposal, but if I can put some background to why we are where we are. Tumbledown as a project, as a notion, was supported by the old Borough Council about 8 or 9 years ago. It was voted on by the full council in borough days, but nothing ever happened. So the council's approved it. Officers were all said yes, but it didn't progress because there was no one was actually driving it. So what we've done with the new town council when we set up was to set up a kind of very dynamic small group of councillors and officers to really drive it, make decisions quickly and get it going, which has pluses and negatives. Pluses, it does get going quickly. Negatives, it can go off in different directions and it isn't attached properly to the council. So this is what we're going to hopefully rectify with this evening, is bringing it a bit more into the mainstream of the council. And up to now, we haven't actually been under any committee structure, but this will bring us firmly into services, which would be really useful because we can feed ideas up and down and you can bring ideas and challenge to us as well, which we probably need at times. So a very positive move. I'm completely easy on the numbers. The 5 was suggested, it could be 3, it could be 7. 1's an odd number, that's probably a bit like dictatorship. So I'll leave you with the numbers, but that's the principle. And the whole idea is in this model, it's a little more accountable, but it still hopefully retains the dynamism which we need to make quick decisions as the project progresses, because there's still lots to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowan. If you don't mind opening it up now, has any other members got any comments on this? Councillor Dickinson.
Reading through this, I mean, I've got a couple of questions. Who's in charge? Is it the project group or is it the operational group? Who's in charge?
The project group.
The project group will be in charge. So what's the point of the operational group then? To me, the reason Tumbledown's being successful is it's being run by a small group. And from what I've seen of large groups running things, they usually fail. And I would like to see it kept small, pushing forward, because it's doing a good job. And I think it's far too bureaucratic. That's my view.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Harris.
Yes, I think I can probably help answer that question, Peter. First of all, it's still going to be managed by a small group in terms of both groups are small, but they're not working together. There's a linkage between them, but they are working separately. Because one is going to be making those day-to-day decisions. Shall we plant the lettuces next week? How are we going to do this? What have we got to do in terms of managing the wood where the forest school takes place? The strategic group is the one that's going to be thinking about what is it we're trying to achieve in the long term and setting the parameters under which the operational group will be working. So those are the differences, and that's why we're having the two groups, one to set the direction, but one to just get on with the work, as you say.
I'm afraid I'm a bit old-fashioned, too many cooks spoil the broth. And I think the dynamism, as I think to quote, if you don't mind, Chair, I think it should be kept small, because if you look at Redlands has been successful because it's been done by 2 people, not too many people have all wanted to get involved in it. And the pavilion started by Phil Sayer, he's through him, it's gone on. So that's why I think too many. You know, is the project manager in charge? Is the site manager in charge? You know, I think it can lead to conflict. That's just a personal view.
Okay, if I can just come in on these points, I think speaking to both officers and members being involved in this project, I think where we are now is as a result of the success that Councillor Dickinson's alluding to. And the project now is really the strategic view of how we can grow the project, how we can bring in new clients, how we can return money into the site to keep it operational and allow the operations to be done. And I think the current setup of where it's been with the officer split is the officer's not known to go left or right and needs to do that background work to develop the project and grow the project, but then can't do the legwork that needs to be done. And I think, you need two very different sets of people involved in that. You need the doers and you need the thinkers. And what this group does is splits that, so that operationally, the operational group will be doing and working within the parameters of the policy and the growth direction the strategic group are setting, which will be signed off by this committee. So let's say, I don't know if it's an example or not, strategic group turn around and think we should be having cattle field at Tumbledown next, or goats. There's a policy decision that will be set then and brought forward by this council, by the strategic group, and then we give it to the operational group to deliver. And that's a completely observed example I've given, I know. But I think there is, I agree, we don't want to turn this into, we don't want to turn this into a total, council setup delays the progress that's been made there. But there is a requirement and a need for that direction and change there now, if it's going to continue. If not, we're going to have very burnt out volunteers, very burnt out officers, and the project won't continue to grow and succeed as it has done. Anyone else want to come in there? Councillor Tewkesbury.
Just following on Councillor Dixon's talked about, you talk about the operational group, talked in there about the group will meet monthly, discuss issues with community grow groups, friends groups, and the site manager will act a link between the two groups. So that in that operational group, that person or those two people there are actually going to be doing the organisation and running, and be meeting with those users and grow groups and the rest of it. So do you still need that project group when the people on the ground who are going to be communicating with the friends groups and the users, other council, the whole of the town council, you need that second group? That's where I'm sat at the moment.
Town clerk.
Thank you, Chair. He's happy to come in on this. The two groups are very distinct, as you've alluded to, with very distinct areas of speciality. There is a lot of project work that needs to be done with Tumbledown. There's a number of buildings that we want to bring back into use, and there's a number of quite very detailed building projects that are going to need planning applications, plans drawn up. We're going to need to make sure that any buildings we develop that, we use sustainable materials, and that they build follow the ethos of the Tumbledown project. That's quite detailed planning work. We're talking Gantt charts, spreadsheets. That is very different from the operational group, which is, as Councillor Harris has said, is more about what's happening on the ground, getting things growing, getting people on the ground to experience, volunteer, grow and develop. Two very different sets of skills. So the operational group will inform the project group so it knows what's needed on the ground, but the project group will be the ones who make those big strategic build organisational changes happen. So I'm hoping that having the two groups, the people, as you say, are the doers who want to be out on the land and have these great ideas about land use, will be free from having to sit in a room for 2 hours on a quarterly basis to go through detailed budgets, Gantt charts, project plans, planning applications, architects' drawings, resource sheets, quantity surveying reports, that side of things. And that the project group will be able to crack on with that detailed paperwork and free the operational group up to get out on the land and make things happen.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gray.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to comment because I have been on the Tumbledown board for quite a while. I'll directly talk to Councillor Dickinson's point. I think for me, the one group, which has been, seat of our pants sort of stuff for the last couple of years, but it needed that to get it going. Where the tension has built over certainly the last 12 months is that the skills needed to get things going are a lot different than the skills needed for a major project strategically.
So what we were doing is focusing on the day-to-day stuff as the group that we had. Where do we plant? What's the forest school do? Rather than saying, and the strategic stuff has got left to one side. So somebody said, oh, once we've done that and that and that, what do we do? Oh, we haven't talked about that. So there was a tension building there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it's a project, so officers are in charge. Councillors make decisions, but officers run projects. Clear about that. And it's a bit like council and committee. We don't have the whole council making every decision. We have a committee that makes that decision. So I think operationally for me, I don't know anything about planting or stuff, and I've really been out of my depth sometimes when we're talking about things that were going on at Tumbledown. But the strategic stuff was different. How much do we invest? Who are we talking to in terms of partnering? Where the buildings go? Planning? I mean, it's a minefield. So for me, the groups could be small, little operational group. The people that know what they're doing should be doing. Alan, I think it is, and some of the councillors involved. And the strategic group needs to be really small as well. So I don't think there'll be many more people involved. But you'll get a clearer cut decisions rather than we've outgrown. John's right. We've outgrown it. The current it's outgrown itself more successfully than perhaps we hoped.
And Clark, did you want to come back on those points?
It wasn't so much on those points, more around, I know I've put the operational group meet monthly, but please don't, I hope the group doesn't feel beholden to that. That's sort of my suggestion, because in November, December, January, there might not be the need to meet anything more than 6 monthly, or maybe skip the meeting in December and meet again in January. And similarly, although Alan Chambers is a requirement, when it comes to our Parks and Open Spaces team, there might be someone better suited to attend from that team. So I think what I would like is an agreement on the structure and the numbers, and then we can sort other things out. Because the one thing about Tumbledown is it is the most organic project I've ever been involved with, and I don't just mean the biologically organic. It's a project that has grown to fill its niche in the community, and it's a project that needs to be free to continue that organic growth. Just as you don't want to fence in wildlife and fence in planting, you want them to find their spaces and grow where the soil is most fertile. It's the same with this project, that is very much community and people led. It needs to be able to adjust and flex. And so broad agreement on the management groups is very much appreciated, but please don't feel that you have to agree frequency of meetings. It's not a committee, it's a project, two sets of project support groups.
Councillor Rose.
I should probably do a non-pecuniary interest because my organisation uses Tumbledown Park. But so you get an idea, because council often talk in very formal ways that doesn't actually bring things to life for you. So to show you the difference, that one group of people who would be involved would look at things like complaints about toilets not working, or that the facility didn't have when we looked at it good enough toilets for people who might have issues with access and cleanliness, things like places where they could sit down out of the sun to have a cup of coffee, communal areas, all these sorts of practical, very planning committee, all sorts of officer kind of formal crap that nobody wants to really deal with, but he's dealing with. And then there's another level, which is that we have people who are going, what part do you want me to cut of this grass? What part do you want me to trim back on the hedges? What parts can we plant and grow things? And that's where the people who've got the vision and the idea of, okay, this is how we're going to use this actual land comes in. And then they'll be the ones who go, okay, so over there, that group's doing that, and that group's doing that, and they're growing some veg, and over there, they're just pottering about, maybe, having fun. And then the reality is, one group is kind of overseeing that it's safe and that's good for our people to use and everybody at all the other organisations and doing all the horrible formalities. And the other group are kind of doing a bit more fun stuff, which is like, what can we do here? What can you do here? What are you growing? Why are you growing that? Can we take that to the nest? Is it a waste of time? Do we need to go and ask for some more seeds because this was dried out? It needs more water, that kind of stuff. So that's why you've got the two different groups, because one's really good at one thing and the other's really good at the other. And often you find people aren't very good at doing both. You know, it's kind of like you'll have somebody who's fantastic, and I have this quite a lot in our organisation, that people are really fantastic at gardening, but they're totally crap when it comes to writing a letter asking for grant money to, you know, supply something that needs to be done on the land. And the other thing is with Redlands, it isn't two people. There are hundreds of organisations and people involved in Redlands who are keeping it going. So though it looks like two people have had to sort it out and get negotiations going, you've had Active Dorset, the Dorset Mental Health Forum, Dorset Mind, you've had all these organisations who are already using the facility getting together to try and keep it running as well. So though things look like they're not bureaucratic and don't look like they have much involved, behind the scenes, actually, it's probably like a minefield. There's probably thousands of people in the community involved. Just saying, got that.
Going to go to Councillor Harris and then back to Councillor Lambert as you request to come at the end, and then we'll go to a recommendation.
I noticed the two recommendations we've got in terms of 1 and 2 don't mention times of meetings. And so I would like to have a third, I would like to propose that we have a third point, which is that the two groups will determine how frequently they should be meeting. For instance, I would say that they might want to decide we will meet at least 6 times a year, but as the town clerk has said, you know, that might be 4 times in the spring and then twice as things are just maintained as they go through the rest of the season. I don't know, so let the groups make that decision. So I would recommend the third point, which is that the two groups will determine how frequently they think they should be meeting.
I'm going to come back to you after Councillor Lambert and to propose that within the recommendation. Councillor Lambert.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've got some sympathies with where Councillor Dickinson is coming from, given our experience and certainly the desire of myself and Councillor Orwell not to lose any momentum. We have very much been pushing it forward within the previous group, but I would agree with Councillor Gray and no doubt others that the time has come for a rethink on how the governance takes place. I am slightly uncomfortable about some aspects of it. As an observation, I don't think it's always been easy with officers and members on the same group taking voting decisions. And I don't quite know what the way out of that is. I make that as an observation. Because one of the things about Tumbledown is the all-encompassing nature of the project, as has been pointed out. This project is hitting a whole lot of different aspects, and there needs to be this kind of holistic approach. I do slightly worry that that element will get lost within the setups that are shown here. I'm particularly concerned about the Tumbledown project group. What is being proposed is 5 councillors and 3 officers. That's 8 people. Now, maybe 8 people meeting every 3 months isn't too bad, but I'm also equally concerned about the idea of meeting that group meeting quarterly, because the experience so far, and admittedly we're well into the project now and hopefully things might ease, but things don't always go to plan because of outside agencies. outside agencies, my experience has been that they're an absolute pain in the backside. And we can't always rely on them. Consultants don't always see the full picture. We have had to be flexible and revisit things on a pretty regular basis in order to get back on track. So I wouldn't want to see this idea of 3 monthly coming through and being sealed here. I would agree that we should be determining the frequency, the two groups should be determining the frequency of meetings. But certainly I think that the Tumbledown project group needs to be, initially at least, to be meeting quite regularly, because we're talking 5 councillors there. There's quite a learning curve that's going to have to take place for any councillor who has not been on that group before. These comments are made not in criticism or not in faith of people, but because of the experiences that we've had. So I'm not sure on exactly the way forward in terms of varying the the motion that's put forward. But would we be able to see the motion, please?
It is just to accept the 2 points.
Right.
Councillor Harris is proposing to put in there a third point.
Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, it's come through not as a recommendation there in the way it's appeared on the screen. That's why I'm just questioning that.
You can put that as a formal recommendation if it's proposed.
Yeah, it's not an amendment yet. There's no proposal to amend, so it's form part of the recommendation that's proposed.
Okay.
Town Clerk, do you want to come back on some of these points?
I think the point's probably already been made. I was just going to say that in the actual recommendations, it does say agree the composition of the groups, because the report says it could be 5 and 3, but recognising the discussion that we've had at last full council and putting that decision firmly with all of you at services. And I think the Councillor Harris's to be proposed amendments on frequency of meetings, I think it's a really good point, Councillor Lambert, that in the beginning, and at times when we've got a lot of the project work, that we need to have that flexibility. So that's a good suggestion from both Councillor Lambert and Councillor Harris.
So truthfully, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, can I just come back in? Can I make a suggestion that we review the 2 groups in a year's time?
I was going to make that same
Because
suggestion.
obviously I hear what lots of people are saying and the need for the project group, but at the moment, we don't know there's a full need for that. So in 6 months' time, we might find the operation group are coping well, and we don't need that. So if we don't have a review in it, then I just think that the operational group will be talking to the community group. They'll be telling them what they want or what they'd like on there. Then they've got to review that and then go back to the project group to ask that when they could already make that decision and move forward. We are a forward-thinking council. I don't want to put it back to go back to the project group, ask their thoughts.
Part of the recommendation, and we'll have it on a forward plan to come back in 12 months' time for review. Okay, so to help us build this recommendation, I'm going to take the project group and ask for if anyone would like to make a suggestion, not recommendation, suggestion on numbers. Currently, the suggestion from the officers is 5 councillors
Numbers always best.
and 3 officers. So, Councillor Lambert, do you have any suggestions?
Certainly dropped from 5 to 4 as a minimum from my perspective. I can see that those officers are needed to to be involved. As someone who believes in, if you like, a committee system and the importance of members, I would, you know, I see an advantage of members potentially having you know, a majority on there. That may be a hang up from Tumbledown board days, and you know, I'm possibly not the best person to make a judgment there.
Next to the
Yeah, I'll make a recommendation of 3 councillors and 2 officers. And if we're really sticky on it, then we can just have one of the officers as a voting thing. But I don't think the voting thing comes into it, because all decisions come back to us anyway for us to vote on. So it's not even like there's a voting set up there. So I just suggest 3 councillors, 2 officers, makes it 5. So, you know, it's not a number if it gets a bit sticky, but members have the majority there regardless.
I'll second that for you, because I think most members have got enough to do anyway, haven't they, without spreading out and doing too many other things,
So now looking back to the operational group, I have a suggestion, please, for the recommendation on the numbers for that.
Is there a recommendation there, Chair?
It's in the, sorry, the operational group as it stands in the report is 3 categories. And managed by site manager and park and open spaces manager. And I'm assuming that also includes friends of groups who will be involved in operation.
What I would suggest is, from the learning we have from Radical Park and Gardens and how that is managed, certainly the project group, I can't recall they've ever actually voted on anything, because things are discussed and taken forward in that way. And then the operational group, I would recommend that you keep that open and organic to whoever wishes to be a part of that, because that is more of a consultative group, was the aim there.
So remove the 3 councillors requirement from the operational group.
If you wish to give yourselves that flexibility, but obviously it's within your gift.
Can I make
Sorry,
my?
Councillor Harris, Councillor Taylor.
So it was just a quick thought. Would it be possible to have for the project group up to 5 councillors and the Tumbledown operational group up to 3? Because at the moment we don't know how many people are going to volunteer for it. And if there are 5 people who want to do the project group, then I wouldn't like to get into the position of sorting out who we're going to have and who we want. Because spreading the work may help.
Obviously, Chairman, I would agree with that, because it's the flexibility, letting the groups determine how much they need in terms of both numbers and operational frequencies. It's up to the groups, because the workloads are going to not be understood in complete by us now here. So let's let the flexibility of who and how many and how often for the group. But we're setting it up as a group, and we're setting up, if you like, a starting number we're looking for, but in the end, it's got to be flexible.
So the recommendation will be up to 5, we'll go with Councillor Taylor's.
Yeah.
And then on the Tumbledown, remove the 3 councillors and just have councillors on the group, as well as the rest of the people. Okay. Now I'm going to come back to you, Councillor Harris, then to propose a
And then-
recommendation.
So mine would be a C, suggesting that, agree that the groups will agree to meet as when they, so let's get this clear. The groups will determine how frequently they should be meeting to do the work they want to undertake.
Perfect. Okay, so that's been proposed by Councillor Harris. Do I have a seconder?
I need to continue to check pages on the screen share to make sure that that's controlled. So when they sorry, Councillor Harris, is it up to 5 councillors on the TPG group? Is that what we were, or was that on the top?
So TP group will be up to 5 councillors, 3 officers. The operational board will remove the limit of councillors and leave it open to all to join. And then we'll have the inclusion of the frequency of meetings as determined by the groups, with the 1 year review.
So that's another way to do this.
It will form the whole recommendation. Do you have one, town clerk?
I just wondered, just to capture everything that's been spoken about, if you wanted to capture in point D, Councillor Tewksbury's recommendation that there is an annual review. I don't know if you wanted to.
That's what I just said, yeah, well, that's within the recommendation, yeah. Okay. So I do have a proposal for that at the moment, being Councillor Harris.
I'll propose the whole of the
Yeah,
recommendation as
whole.
now written up there.
Councillor Lambert is seconding.
No,
No,
sorry, can I?
no, not until I've taken over seconder. If I have a seconder to the recommendation. Councillor Frost. Did you want to speak to the recommendation, Councillor Lambert?
Yes, because we've lost the means by which this group is made up, which was one of the original recommendations. I understood that there would be. Okay, so my question is, how do we determine which councillors are on which groups?
Yeah, method of election.
Which is what I think the original recommendation was meant to indicate, although I could be wrong on that.
Surely the operational of that is more the members that want to be there and working on the ground and working the operations and delivering the plan, which any one of us could do anyway as a volunteer or a member of the Friends group, which is also within that recommendation. If I read that correctly, Town Clerk. So by putting a limit on there, we're not achieving anything. Councillor James.
Can I just make it easier, and like we've done with other things like this, other groups, that whoever wants to put their name forward would either email the chair or who is it, Alan, or somebody on the group already to say, I'd like to be the councillor that sits on it. And it always used to be the way that it was done, first come, first served. So whoever sort of emails the chair, says, I'd like to be on that group.
I sort of take the selection of what members would be. Jane would include on a roundup that these positions are vacant, and should we get more than 5, then it will be voted on by council. If it's not, then we go with the up to 5 number. I want to get the governance review right, rather than worrying about how we're going to get people on here, because we can worry about that once we've got the boundaries of what we want to appoint.
Yeah.
So does that make sense, Councillor Lambert? Right, okay, if there's no, Councillor Harris?
Yes, but without, I'd just like to take a straw poll, if you like, and without sort of committing ourselves to anything, would members here see that those people that have been active on the Tumbledown board to date would have a priority within those 5 councillors?
Happy to, because they're probably the ones that have been doing it and know what they're doing, whereas everyone else, like I said, we've all got busy other things to do, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to take a straw poll, see what.
That would be up to each councillor to consciously vote. If should it come to that, we have 6 people choosing that. Let's see if we fill the 5. Okay. If there's nothing else on, we have a recommendation. We have a proposer, Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Frost. I'm going to go to the vote now, please. All those in favour of the recommendation, show of hands, please. Looks unanimous. I'm just going to check for a few.
7, 8, 9.
Any against? Or any abstentions? No. Difficult sometimes to realise who's voting numbers and not. So Will's hand up.
Yeah, definitely so.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, members, for sticking with us on that one. Thank you, Town Clerk. And we will come back to a review in 12 months' time. Just to confirm, you'll put out in the weekly roundup for nominations.
I will, Chair.
Right, item 8 on the agenda, provision of lockers for sea swimmers. Can we ask Will Holmes, our resort manager, to introduce this item? Where it comes today.
I'll introduce and I'll pass to Will for the detail, that's all right, Chairman. Yes, thank you, Member. This report has been produced following approval of a PID by this committee at its meeting in May. The PID was produced by Councillor Watley and aimed to provide locker facilities for sea swimmers at Greenhill Beach. Officers have obtained costs for a small block of lockers and identified a suitable location on the promenade near the Stone Groin. In order to provide effective management of the lockers' use, officers are proposing that they are allocated to specific clubs for their exclusive use. As a result, Councillor Watley has proposed 3 popular local clubs to benefit from the new lockers. Members are asked to support the request for the allocation of £1,000 from the project's reserve and recommend this use of reserves to full council for approval. Thank you.
Councillor James, I think you want.
Well, I never thought I should have declared an interest as a member of one of the groups. But yeah, like I said last time at this, they need to be up that end because most of the women that I go to go up Greenhill on the Groin, and that's where they need the lockers. So
you're declaring a non-pecuniary interest?
yeah, yeah.
Will, was there anything else to add from James' introduction before we go into the debate?
No.
Right. Councillor Rose and Councillor Hughes.
I'd like it to be accessible to more than just 3 organisations. I think it should be open to the public as well, because we have people who don't want to join a group who swim all year round in the sea, who want somewhere safe to put their belongings. But also we might have school groups, we might have college groups who want to use those lockers. So I think limiting it to 3 organisations is a bit discriminatory, to be honest. Should be open to all.
Thank you very much, Councillor Roos. Councillor Tewkesbury.
I'd like to second what Councillor Roos has just said on that part. I was just on the question is the location. They're going to be opposite the groin, against the fence around the Swiss Gardens and swimming pool. So does this mean that these lockers are going to be protruding onto the esplanade, or are they going to be in the grounds of the Swiss Gardens? Because if they are, we are then going to be narrowing the width of the promenade in a very busy place.
Will, any comment on
Suggested location, if you're looking towards Longmore, you've got the Sluice Gardens on the right hand side, and you've got the smaller part with the railings on the left hand side. There's a small section which is faced out towards the sea. It's quite a large area, it's not in line with any wall, and we were proposing to put them there as at the moment it wouldn't shelter anything. It would be on the promenade, but yeah, that's our proposed location.
That's what it says, that's sort of clarification in the report. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Roos.
Can I ask, how did it go asking the Greenhill Community Trust to offer up space?
We haven't asked them to offer up space on their land. It's all on council land. We haven't asked anyone else. Can I just say that also to pick up on the point about exclusive use, we are concerned about inappropriate use. It's not monitored. The lockers we have down by the beach office are monitored by CCTV. We are concerned people may use lockers for other reasons other than sea swimming. And we're just concerned that at that end of the beach, well away from our regular observation and monitoring, it becomes a little bit more difficult to police them properly. And having exclusive use by clubs who take responsibility for what's in there and the security of those lockers, we feel that minimises the risk to the council.
Rainface Sea Swimmers managed to come up with a system so that everybody could use it, everybody, without there being vandalism or anything else. So maybe it's worth communicating with those 3 organisations to ask them if they have any ideas around how they can make it more secure. But I think not allowing, because it used to be that you'd have a passcode that you'd have to pay money towards, which helped with the upkeep. And then with that passcode, you would then have free use of that one locker for that day, for example. And that meant anybody, absolutely anybody from the public could then pay to use that locker. I don't see why, for example, a woman wanting to swim in the winter on her own should have to put her belongings on the beach and not be able to use a locker. And have been told that the only option she has is to go where there's CCTV cameras. Again, it's discriminating against certain people because of a view.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bruce. Councillor James?
All I can say is that whenever I've been with the group that included, there's at least 15 of us, and sometimes there's like 100 of us. So there's always somebody to keep an eye on bags if they're not in the lockers. And I think if there were lockers to be used, they would pretty much make sure they were placed and looked after.
Yeah, I think from what you're saying, the ban probably isn't with the swimming clubs. You could have somebody looking after them. It probably is more the public. Councillor Gray, can I just ask sort of something, your view here as Chair of F&G? It looks here now with the proposals changed from a community use locker system to now providing a service for free organisations. And I'm just wondering, would this sort of proposal not be better suited for the community chest for these organisations proposing or writing to us to say, because at the moment now it's very much changed from the PID that says, can we have provision for sea swimmers, meaning everyone that swims sea, that we're providing lockers for free swimming clubs. And I kind of feel like that if these free swimming clubs would like the lockers for their exclusive use, then they should probably be applying for the community chest fund and it being done in that mechanism rather than the general council operational budget.
Can I just answer that a minute quickly? Because that I know the group I belong to, because of the way it's set up, they cannot form themselves into a charity or have a status where they've got a treasurer or anything like that. So they wouldn't be able to, because you'd have to be a group, wouldn't you, that with a proper bank account and the rest of it to apply. And I know the way they're set up, they can't do that. So I don't know about the other two groups, but I mean, if it comes to it, I'm happy to persuade them to sort of try and apply for grants, but I don't know how they do it without having a proper setup, because they haven't got these bank account treasurer.
Have all three groups approached us about this, or have we just offered it? I don't understand.
As Councillor Watley has taken responsibility for selecting the groups.
But if Councillor James is one of the group and they haven't approached us, how is Councillor Watley?
Because I know, because one of his neighbours is the admin on one of the setups, and she sort of mentioned it in passing about could we have lockers, and he said, oh, I take it on, and then she mentioned it to me, and I said, well,
it really depends on.
But because they don't want to set up as a group with a bank account.
Yeah, I get that. But it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to achieve lockers for people who just want to swim, or are you trying to achieve supporting groups of organised swimmers? And I think you need to be clear about that principle, because one will lead you down the route of, it's a council project that we put lockers in so that groups can, anybody, including the single female or single male or children, teenagers would use it. So if that's what you're trying to achieve, then you shouldn't do it for groups. But if it's, you want to support swimming groups, which is a valid cause, then you could go either this committee route or you could get the groups to apply. But either way, Tony would end up responsible for the lockers. So I suppose the advantage of doing it the way Tony's done it is that we still retain ownership and responsibility whilst offering a free service to, let's face it, which is a growing sport. So I think you go back to the principle, are you trying to provide lockers for people or for groups? And if you answer that question, then
Can I come back on that? So well, yesterday I worked with a client who has severe anxiety, and sea swimming is the one thing he enjoys to do in the winter because he hates it in the summer because it's around other people. And he doesn't want to join any of the groups. He doesn't want to be around other people. He wants to safely sea swim by himself in the winter. And we take away that opportunity when we go, okay, well, you know what, them and their group who can watch their stuff can go and see swim safely, but you have to put your stuff on the beach and be more extra vulnerable. You're a vulnerable person already, but we'll make you extra vulnerable. It seems an injustice in some ways for some of the people who just don't want, because there is, in all the groups and in all the organisations, there will always be some toxicity that people with mental health conditions or just people in general don't want to get involved with.
But you're
And
not
they
making it
want
more,
access
you're not
to-
making it
to
more because he hasn't got
safety.
anything in the first place, so it's just
Yeah.
the same. My point would be, why is it limited to 3? Because you could actually do both. I don't know what the cost is.
That's sort of where my view is.
Why don't you offer the 3 to the groups and then put one more bank in for people? I mean, I don't know what the cost of a stack of, can somebody tell me what?
Just over 300
Quid.
For how many?
for a bank of 4 lockers.
So buy 2 more banks and do 5, if you can afford, if you can put them in there, have you got your budget? Have you got your budget? And put 4 or 5 in, and then it solves Christie's problem with her group can have 1 lot, and then single people can have others.
Or could it be that, and I know this might be extra work in part for you, Tony, but people get referred, i.e. if you want to loan swim in the winter, you have to go to Rainbow Town Council yourself or via someone of a service to get you the access to those lockers. That way you're still giving individuals the opportunity, but they still have to have, like with any service that I work in, you'd have to have a referral. We'll refer you to the council so you can have that opportunity to use those lockers.
Okay. Moving on then, Councillor Tewkesbury and Councillor Harris.
Yeah, just, I think Councillor Gray touched a lot of this on this, it just, the vision, it says, the vision perceived from us, and if you go on down to the report, and then talks about the group, so really we need to get more meat on the bone, of which one it is it for groups or is it perceived from us, because it talks about both on there.
That's for us to build into the recommendation. We might need to do more work if we're going to be looking at open provision.
We'll be here debating this all night, what the crux of the matter is, which one's it for?
Like I said, that's our gift to decide, but I think if we are going to go down the route of open use, then we need to defer this because there needs to be more measures on it. Councillor Harris.
I was going to ask the question which comes from the previous conversation. How many lockers could we put there without it causing too much of a disruption to the promenade? Is the space big enough for more than our 3 that we're recommending?
I could possibly find out in the next 5 or 10 minutes.
The reason for asking that question is following up what's been said, whether we have a bank of 5 lockers, we allocate the 3 as suggested, but we have a couple of sets of lockers that we can then work on the proposals for making access to other groups or other individuals, but we can look at the rules and everything else if we know that the space is there. This can be a trial, get the lockers in, but then get 2 more alongside them for other purposes.
I think I'm going to make sort of look at this and put a recommendation forward. I think if we give it to the groups to use, the 90% of the time those lockers are going to be vacant.
Yeah.
Because there's only going to be the time that they arrange to swim.
I was just going to say that there's certain times that they will go swimming, so those lockers will be there. And I personally, you know, I didn't realise that you just put 3 groups down. I think if you put lockers there, they'll get used. And I think the girls that go swimming, some will either just put their bags where they normally put them up behind a rock, or they'll use a locker and they're there half an hour, gone. And so if you allocate them specifically to groups, that you are going to have
So I think what we should probably look at doing then is, I understand the reason we've been looking at this because we don't want to leave the keys there in case the lockers are abused in any way. So we're looking for ownership of the keys. But I think we should probably leave them open to the public, trial this. If we believe there's abuse of the system or abuse of the lockers, then we remove the keys and go back to the swimmers. But if not, the general public will benefit from these. And let's say this isn't successful in this season, can we relocate the lockers we procure into the beach office? Is there room? So we're not going to lose anything. We try it out by the groin to the general public. If we think it's not working or being abused for any reason, we offer it back to the swimmers, or relocate back to the central beach underneath the beach office. If I propose that, do I have a second then?
Yes.
Councillor Furman. Going to go to a vote then. All those in favour? raise your hands. So we'll just raise hands if you're in favour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? And any abstentions? 4 abstentions. That is carried, members.
I'm apologising because I'm babysitting.
We do move now into the information items. As we have agreed, these are just for information and not for discussion in the committee. If any members have got questions on these items, please do feel free to email the relevant officer for further information. What I will just ask on that, what we had agreed, we just have a point of contact next to each of these going forward. If there is a question, the members know immediately who to go to. So that is just for noting along with the actions from previous meetings and the full plan. We just show hands for noting those items. Thank you very much, that's carried. So I close the meeting at 8 minutes past 8. Thank you very much for your attendance.